around. We've put them on bulletin boards, signs, hats. We've got them everywhere now, core values. Now, what do we do with them? How are we going to use our core values in just day-to-day operation of the business? So let me hear from you. How do you use your core values? Where do they come into play? Anybody?
We hire based upon our core values for sure. We make that part of making sure they fit into our culture. And then in our monthly all staff meetings, we strength spot and identify who's using a core value and how.
I love both of those. Number one, using them for hiring purposes. Jim Collins said something else. Someone asked Collins, they said, how do I get my people to buy into my core values? Collins' answer was interesting. He says, you don't. You don't. He says, you hire people who share your core values. Because if I hire Christine and she doesn't believe in my core values, what are the chances that now just magically, because she's one of my employees, that all of a sudden she's going to share my core values? Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. They have to have those core values coming in. They have to share those core values coming in, because if they don't, the likelihood of them somehow just adopting my core values, very unlikely. So very important that you use your core values in your hiring. In fact, what I suggest to my clients is that about 50% of the job interview should be about core values, should be about core values. So as an example, if I'm interviewing Luis has come in for a job interview, and we're going to talk about his skills, we're going to talk about his competencies, we're going to talk about his work experience, but pretty quickly, I'm going to get to core values. And I'm going to ask a question like this. So Luis, one of our core values here is competition. Give me the most recent example that you competed at the highest level and what resulted from that. Because what I need to know is that Luis cares as much about competition as I do. I need to know that he shares that core value. So I'm going to ask, that's what's referred to as a behavioral interviewing question. I'm going to ask him about competition. I'm going to ask him about family. I'm going to ask him about growth and reading books. I'm going to ask him about staying healthy. Because again, I need to know that he shares my core values. Now, would you agree that not everyone is highly competitive? Yeah, not everyone's highly competitive. Just because if Luis is not highly competitive, that doesn't make him a bad person. That just makes him a bad fit for my company. You see the difference? He's a great person if he's not competitive, but he's not going to be a good fit for my company because people in my company are highly competitive. So one excellent way to use core values is in the hiring process. And Julie shared another great way to use core values is on an ongoing basis with your existing employees. Because while you interviewed them for core values when they came in, you also want to make sure that now that they're on board, now that they're one of your employees, that they are continuing to demonstrate those same core values. So if I'm doing a performance review with Laura, one of my questions is, well, Laura, you know, one of our core values is competition. In the last 3 months, last 6 months, give me an example of a time that you competed for something as hard as you could and you were successful. And then I may ask a similar question. I may say, give me an example of something you competed for in the last 3 to 6 months and you were unsuccessful. I want to know how she uses that core value of competition on an ongoing basis. Okay. So great examples of ways that we're going to use core values. I'm also going to suggest that you want to use these core values in making decisions. How many of you face at least one difficult decision every day? Yeah, every day, right? We face difficult decisions. And I want to suggest that once you have implemented these core values, those difficult decisions get easier. because the question that you're going to ask yourself is, what are my core values telling me about this decision? In fact, that's a question that I ask my clients. I've got clients that I coach, CEOs of companies, and if they're facing a tough decision, let's say that Nicole is one of my clients and she's having a tough decision, the question I'll ask, it's a pretty simple question, is I'll say, Nicole, how do your core values speak to that decision? And all of a sudden, what seemed like a difficult decision just got easier. Because if you use your core values as boundaries, as a filter for those tough decisions, trust me, those decisions get much easier. Because now whatever your decision is has to be consistent with those core values. And the same thing for your employees. While you're here today, are your employees making decisions on your behalf? Of course they are. Now, they have two choices. They can either call and interrupt you during this session, which is a terrible decision, or they can make the decision on their own using your company's core values. Which would you rather have? Do you want them calling you 12 times a day? Should I do this? Should I do this? Or do you want them just asking themselves, okay, our core values are this, this, and this. Okay, that's how I make decisions now based on core values. So decision making not only gets easier for you with core values, it gets much easier for your employees. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So a number of different ways that you're going to use these core values once you've established them, once you've discovered them going forward.